The teenage girl writhed on the floor of the Manila, Philippines jail cell and moaned as if she were in terrible pain. Suddenly she sat upright, her eyes wide, her arms flailing at an invisible foe. "Here he comes again," she screamed. "The monster has come again to bite me." The police officer who had been posted to observe 18-year-old Clarita Villanueva shook his head sadly at the distraught young woman's hysterical screams. He did not believe her wild tale of some bug-eyed monster with a black cape that flew around trying to chew her up. When the police had found Clarita, she had been walking about on the streets of Manila, sobbing for someone to protect her from a monster. Her strange behavior had attracted a small crowd of observers from a nearby tavern who had stood by cheering her on as she struggled with her invisible attacker. She had been taken into custody under the suspicion of being either a drug addict or an alcoholic. It was a warm, sultry night in May 1951, just the kind of night that the police knew would bring out all of the city's undesirables. This girl was obviously one of them, the officer at the scene thought to himself. When police medical officer Dr. Mariana Lara gave the teenager a cursory examination, he diagnosed her as having suffered an epileptic episode and advised that she be closely watched so she could not injure herself. He left the police station quite sure in his diagnosis. "Don't worry," the police officer guarding Clarita's cell reassured her as she crouched in terror behind the bunk in her cell. "No monster can get you in there. He couldn't get through the bars." "But he is coming," Clarita shrieked, "and he is drifting right through the bars." Then, before the officer's startled eyes, livid teeth marks began to appear on Clarita's upper arms and shoulders. He quickly opened the cell door, knelt beside the girl, and helped her to her feet. The girl screamed again, and more bleeding wounds and welts appeared on her arm. It was as if an invisible monster had wrapped its entire mouth around her slim arm and had sunk its teeth deep into her flesh. The officer helped Clarita into the hall, and together they fled the cell to seek out his captain. The captain quickly assessed that the situation was far beyond anything his expertise as a law enforcement officer had prepared him for. Within a short time, the chief of police, the city's mayor, and the medical examiner had all gathered around Clarita, attempting to decide what could be done to help the girl. Mayor Arsenio Lacson and the chief of police had already completed their examination of Clarita by the time Dr. Lara returned to the jail, muttering his disapproval at being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night to observe a young woman whom he had already diagnosed as suffering from epileptic seizures and obviously inflicting wounds upon herself. Self-inflicted. The two men frowned at the medical examiner. How could she bite herself on the back of her neck? Gently, Mayor Laxton questioned Clarita while the doctor examined her. What was attacking her? The girl sobbed that she certainly did not know its name. It resembled a man with a long, flowing black cape. It was very ugly and came at her with its fangs bared and ready to sink into her flesh. The medical examiner traced a forefinger over the indentations in the girl's skin. They certainly appeared to be the prints of teeth, and he had to admit the girl did not appear to be drunk or under the influence of any drugs. The police chief noted the date, May 10th, 1951, on the calendar. A religious man, he had briefly entertained the notion that this might be the onset of a manifestation of stigmata, a replication of the wounds that Christ suffered during the crucifixion, but there were no special holy days in the Philippines during the month of May. Clarita spent the rest of the night on a bench in the front office of the police station, closely attended by an officer who had been assigned the task of keeping watch for a monster he had not seen with his own eyes. The next morning, the girl was brought to court to face the charges of vagrancy that had been levied against her. There, before the incredulous eyes of the entire court, Clarita endured another attack by her invisible monster. Reporters rushed to stand beside her for a closer look. Dr. Lara took the girl in his arms as she swooned from the excruciating pain of the unseen jaws that had attached themselves to her flesh. This girl is definitely not having an epileptic fit, Dr. Lara told the reporters. These teeth prints are real, and they are most certainly not self-inflicted. There was no need to attest to the reality of the teeth marks to the reporters. They were serving as startled witnesses to the cruel indentations that were appearing on the girl's arms, shoulders, palms, and neck. Dr. Lara told the police officer to send at once for the mayor and the archbishop. This is outside my realm of physiology and medicine, he said. Perhaps a clergyman will be of more value in this case than a doctor. By the time Mayor Lawson arrived, the unfortunate girl had become a veritable mess of deeply embedded teeth prints and swollen and bruised flesh. You poor girl, the mayor commiserated, taking one of Clarita's hands into his own. Then, while he held her hand, deep teeth marks appeared on opposite sides of her index finger, as if a hungry fiend were trying to chew the digit off. Dr. Lara called for an ambulance, and both he and Mayor Lasson rode with her to the hospital. The driver thought that Clarita was the victim of some horrible beating until the teeth began to attack her in the automobile. He drove the ambulance through Manila traffic, one eye on the road and the other on the tortured girl in the back. Throughout the 15-minute ride to the hospital, Clarita shouted that there were two creatures attacking her, each of them with large bag-like eyes and awful teeth. As the doctor and mayor watched in horror, teeth marks appeared on both sides of the girl's throat and on the hands that Mayor Laxton held in a vain attempt to comfort her. The unexplained attack ceased when Clarita entered the hospital. When she was released 6 weeks later, she had recovered her health almost completely. Clarita never again suffered from the terrible invisible jaws that had torn at her flesh, but her body would forever bear the scars of those vicious attacks by her invisible assailant. What happened to Clarita Villanueva is a complete mystery, something that simply defies rational explanation, Dr. Lara commented. I don't mind saying that I was scared out of my wits.